Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Burnt-Santy. Very, very, very happy to tell you that the guests today are the two pushy dames, Kathy Gallo and LeeAnn Soucy.
Hey,
Heather. Did I say your name right, LeeAnn?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the last name I meant.
Oh, you did say
okay, good. So you've been on the show before and been talking about coming back for a little while now. So I'm glad that we're finally doing it.
We are too.
Oh, good. Yeah. And when you folks are watching the video of this, you can kind of see they both have alphabet shirts on, t-shirts on. There we go. Thanks, LeeAnn. Oh, there's Kathy's. All
baby.
Right. Yeah.
And our fabulous pandemic bodies to show.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the letter of the week kind of practice that people use so often in the name of literacy and reading. So to start with our quote, this comes from a book called So Much More Than ABCs, The Early Phases of Reading and Writing by Judith Shigadance and Molly Collins, which we were talking pre-recording. We all use as a textbook. Mm-hmm. in some of our classes. And the quote is this: the accurate naming of letters rests on good letter discrimination, which requires active comparison of them. If children's exposure is restricted to one letter a week, opportunities to compare and contrast letters are reduced. So right there's one reason that letter of the week is not as effective as we want it to be or hope it will be, because it's not how children learn. They need that comparison. And when we're just isolating and spending a whole week on one, they don't get that. But so when you two scheduled this with me, this was one of the topics you suggested we talk about. So I want to let you guys talk about why that's important to you. And we'll just go from there.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to start, Kath? So
sure.
One of our big things, and the reason why we call ourselves the Two Pushy Dames, is because we feel that we need to push back on that academic push down. Mm-hmm. And I think we go in and out of programs just like you do, Heather, all the time. And what we see in so many programs is letter of the week. And, so much time is spent on teachers, photocopying that sheet and spending the whole week talking about the letter B and trying to figure out how their activities can relate to the letter B, say. And, when really there are so many better ways to teach children about letters, mm-hmm. And you talked about do the chicka dance. And, one of the things she talks about is, looking at, larger sound segments rather than just an individual letter. So like syllables and mm-hmm. talking, introducing children to letters that way and, helping them understand. And that's why we read books like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and, llama llama, mm-hmm. because all those types of words, the rhyming is what is key, I think, for kids to starting to understand that. And we push them too much. We're mm-hmm. expecting way too much for young kids. We need to take a cue from Finland for sure. And I know yes. Kat likes to talk about Finland a lot, but it's crazy what we're doing to our young kids. We need to embrace the play piece, and also we need to embrace nursery rhymes and storytelling mm-hmm. and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And for me, I just think about poor Zoe and Zachary, who have to wait 26 weeks before their letter pops,
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot and there's a ton of research out on this. In fact, one of our friends and colleagues, Dr. Christina Cassano at Salem State University in Massachusetts, she co-wrote or co-edited a book about pivotal research in early literacy. And if you haven't read that in the bathtub yet, Heather, we can probably hook you up with a copy of that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I haven't.
Yeah. We'll send you one. Yay. But there's a ton of research out about it. And basically, children don't learn letters in isolation. Children learn letters that are meaningful to them. Mm-hmm. And for Zoe and Zachary, the Z is going to be their most meaningful letter. And, Adam and Abigail are going to check out after week one because B's and C's aren't, well, Abigail might be doing good because she's got the A and the B right out of the gate. But if you think about it logically, taking 26 weeks to learn the alphabet is way too long. And in 26 weeks, if a child is even, comprehending it all, they're not making connections. Half the school year is gone. I mean, there's only 52 weeks in a year, and half of them are going to be spent on this. So some of the research would say that if you do teach letters in isolation, which we don't certainly recommend, you want to do it quicker. So maybe a letter a day or a couple of letters a day, and make connections to them. And that way children get to see those letters in rotation many more times throughout the year, rather than twice to go around, and we've seen, I'm sure you have too, somehow it drops off around J or K or L because the teacher or the kids get bored with it, or they're not sitting still. So, I mean, some of these kids never get to see the end of the alphabet if it's a letter of the week kind of a plan. And we're not trying to bash anybody or make anybody feel like they need to go to confession or take the letters off the wall. Just to think about it, just to really think about it. Somebody probably did a great training years ago and said, let's do a letter a week. And everybody said, oh, great. That'll help me plan. So we get that, but it's time to move on from that methodology.
Yeah. I think it, like so many things in pushdown practice, it gives you a quick visual. So people looking from the outside can say, oh, they are doing literacy because they've got this letter of the week. And, families get that receipt for what happened, as Lisa Murphy would say. But it doesn't meet children where they are developmentally or address. So let's talk about, 3-year-olds are doing this, and sometimes 2-year-olds are doing this letter of the week. And I've got landscapers going, so I'm like, they're going to be the lawnmower.
We can't hear
Okay,
them.
Good. They think, there's evidence to say that children who learn do this letter of the week thing can say 4 letters at the end of it, or identify 4 letters, but we don't stop to think about whether that's what we should be doing at that age. And we skip so much foundational stuff that's harder to see or harder to prove to a family or an administrator that the learning is happening and that it's important for literacy. And I think that's why it's so persistent and people really hang on to it.
Yes.
Because it's measurable, and everybody feels like the only thing that's valuable is what you can measure.
We keep talking about, we keep hearing research-based. Well, guess what? A lot of the research that's out there is saying we should be letting children play and be children. But where's that? You know what I mean? So it's really interesting. But again, it comes back to the data, and we want to know how many children know how many letters, et cetera, when really that's not the important piece. It will come. It'll come. It'll come organically as well if you're doing the right things in the program. The whole research-based thing, it kills us. And there's that great research that came from the 80s that was talking about how if children knew nursery rhymes in the 3rd grade, they showed better reading skills and writing skills. Their numbers were higher in the 3rd grade. And people with nursery rhymes, well, that's because they're rhyming and they're repeating things and they're learning, and but that's, we don't talk about that.
Well, and I find that a lot of my college students, and even when I was in a classroom, I haven't, with toddlers, especially not so much, because my preschool classroom was a language specific clinic. So they knew the value of nursery rhymes, but so many of my college students and so many of my coworkers in other center situations weren't familiar with nursery rhymes even anymore. I remember one of my, co-teachers, assistant teachers, whatever the word was, I had brought in, the black and white checkered Mother Goose.
Oh, we all have the Mother Goose. Yes.
And I brought in a board book version of it. And she was really struggling to read it to the children, and because it didn't make sense to her and she'd never heard it before. And it was just really eye-opening for me. The research from the 80s is still true, but none of us know those nursery rhymes anymore.
Exactly. But that's rich. And that's, the language in it is rich. The rhyming of it is rich, and it's valuable. But like I said, we're not paying attention to it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I worry too about it. I mean, I'm just thinking about our silly t-shirts, A, B, C. So if you look, and there is a correlation between 3rd grade reading level and alphabet knowledge in early years. There is a connection, but alphabet knowledge is more than can you caption, that's an A, that's a B, that's a C. And a lot of kids would be able to say, oh, I know those letters, but they don't understand that LMNOP is 5 letters or 6. I can't count them, but however many they are. LMNOP is one thing. It's kind of like my child can count to 30, but they don't know whether 2 M&Ms is better than 3 or 4, or, that kind of thing. So a lot of it's rote knowledge rather
just
than
syllable memorization. And
exactly. And a lot of what we see, and also the research points to, that the most effective way to really teach letters is with the meaningful letters, like we talked about. And that means it needs to be individualized, because every child in the room isn't named Heather who wants to start with an H, So Heather's alphabet knowledge would be very different from LeeAnn's, because your letters are different, but you share some letters. So, teachers, and we always want to make a teacher's job easier. We don't want to burden you with anything more difficult. And if you could let go of some things, if you're doing letter of the week right now, or if your program is insisting on it, or you bought some curriculum that does letter of the week, really think about it and think about other ways. And there's we could go through ways to do letter knowledge and alphabet knowledge and understanding, but the one at a time is just not the best way to do it.
I went and visited it was a half-day preschool. And one of the little boys, of course, as I came in the room, said, "What's your name?" And I said, "My name is Heather." And he went, "Like together?" And I was like, I had a whole full body response to that's
awesome.
Simple thing that he did that. And for me, I was like, that's so much more valuable than the Zoophonics thing that you've got on the wall.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So cool. That's amazing. That's so great. And again, the names, we know that the names are so important at such an early age. So, if we want to think about literacy and we want to think about recognizing names, we need to do what Judy Schickendance talks about, is that own name advantage. Like, what is my name? What is your name? So if you're holding up name tags and saying, you can go line up, or you can go to the table, or whatever it is from group time. And if, say, you hold up Hope, and Heather, you're like, "Oh, my name." And then the teacher say, "No, your name is H-E. This is H-O. This is Hope's name." It's just all valuable, because then you as Heather are like, "Oh, okay, I need to wait for the H-E." So it's all just, it's relevant. It means something. So as a preschool classroom, you want to have the children's names everywhere. You want to have them on rocks. You want to have them when they walk into the classroom and show up. They might put their rock with their name on it in a basket. It might be, in the writing center, everyone's name is there somewhere with their picture. So you want to write their name, you can, because that's meaningful. And we just keep pushing away meaningful learning for young kids. It's just so hard.
Yeah. One of the most popular things that I had in the language preschool that I worked in, we had one of those, it was just a big marker board that sat on the floor, for child size. And we used sentence strips and wrote every child's name on a sentence strip and laminated them and just put those in the tray with the markers. And that we had a whole fancy writing area right next to it. But what they wanted was that, marker boards are fun, but also their name and other children's names became important for them there.
And I think that's the thing. You'll have children in every classroom who will know their name probably when they arrive, depending upon how old the kids are. And you'll have kids who know every other child's name too. If you do the transition with name cards, there'll be one that you can always rely on to kick the kid or give them a little poke to say, "Hey, that's you, Bob, go get your hands washed," or whatever. Those kids don't need the letter of the week. They know the letters, they understand them, they have meaning and value, and they don't need that. So they're sitting there thinking, "Oh, here we go." And I think teachers with a curriculum that's kind of prescribed like that do things as groups. And every child brings home their cue on Q week or whatever. And those children don't need that. So they need better challenges, and we need to help to build their knowledge and learning in a different way. So we're kind of wasting their time.
Yeah. Speaking of the letter Q, did you guys see this week the thing on Facebook where some school, to teach that Q and U always go together, had a wedding?
Oh.
And a little boy dressed up like a groom and a little girl dressed up like a bride, and the teacher conducting the ceremony, and they had Q and U on the back of their clothes, and they did a wedding, and it was gross.
And that the teacher's still employed, and the vice principal who read the underwear book to kids got
Is
fired.
fired. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there
And
you go.
And so I commented like this, I hope this is a joke, it's disgusting. And people were like, no, they do it at my school. They do it at my school. Like, so this is maybe a new trend.
Goodness.
And it made me sick. But anyway,
Oh,
so don't do that one either, I guess, listeners.
Wow. Yeah. If you're marrying Q's and U's, please think of
Yeah.
a different way to do that.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Some days I can get through without hearing horrible things like that.
Yeah,
but
I'm
so
sorry
you
that I
just
brought
ruined-
that to
You
you.
ruined it for me today.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Okay, well, let's go in a different direction then.
We're just moving to Finland.
really,
That's all. That's it. We're out.
yeah.
You know, it's
Um,
funny too, Heather, because Kathy and I have talked about this, and we're like, I wonder where it came from. And I get the idea that we want kids to know the letters and the sounds.
Yeah.
And something I was thinking about was, you know, you think about something like Sesame Street, and Sesame Street is so prominent. And I know when I grew up on Sesame Street, and I would watch it every week, but Sesame Street brings you, you know, every show is brought to you by the letter H.
Mhm.
And I always wonder if that had an effect on, you know, early childhood teachers and how and what they teach and what
Oh,
they teach in
sure.
practice, because they still do it. You know,
Yeah.
today's show is, you know, is brought to you by the letter M, whatever.
Yeah.
So I always wonder if that had an effect on letter of the week and how we teach children. I don't know. It's just
That-
something.
That
It's
would
so
make
prominent.
sense. Yeah, I always wondered, like, there had to be a first person who did this stuff, and then it just spreads.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like the first person who said timeout is better than spanking kids.
Yes.
So everybody said, you're right, timeout. Let's do timeout. Timeout's the best thing in the world now.
Yeah.
And luckily somebody else came along and said, yeah, not so much. Let's redirect kids. But
Yeah.
we go through these ebbs and flows in the field, and I'm old. LeeAnn's not as old as me, but I've been around long enough to know that there are lots of ups and downs and ebbs and flows and adjustments. But letter of the week has been a lingerer. You know, we still see it an awful lot, and it is a little concerning. I think it's time to get the word out that there are better ways.
I think that one of the other things that keeps us hanging on to letter of the week is turnover in our fields and the uneven teacher qualifications. And so this is not me saying that everybody has to have a bachelor's degree to know how to do this. If you listen to the episode Richard and Liz and I did about this a few weeks ago, but I do think that because we have generally in early childhood programs about a 40 before COVID, even about a 40% turnover rate annually, that's a lot of retraining and onboarding and teaching and training to do for new teachers. But if we just have this, we do letter of the week, then we can pass that on. And I don't know that that's an easy fix, but I think it's something that has to be part of the conversation.
Well, you know, maybe in our lifetime, we'll see that the easier thing to help all new teachers learn is let children play in a rich environment that's filled with appropriate materials for children, and teachers serve as, you know, observers and facilitators and documenters and promoters of learning that way. That would be pretty awesome, and not relying on the letter of the week or the handwriting without tears and sorry. But, you know, there's a lot of things that people say, oh, this must be what I should do. You know, this must be what parents, and a lot of it is what parents want. But I think we need to educate parents at the same time to say, you know, the play-based research is where we all need to be, and forget about all the other things. You know, the Common Core pressure on kindergarten teachers pushes down to preschool teachers, pushes down to toddler teachers, and it's highly concerning. So,
I'm a firm believer that change in the direction of play is in the hands of the families. Like, that's where the power is. If we can let families know, because they come in and they ask for, what do you know, how are you getting ready to read or whatever, or how do you get them ready for school? And they're doing that as good intentioned advocates for their child's academic success based 100%. On the information they have. But the information they have is faulty because they've been marketed to since before their children were born. And so if we could educate parents, and that phrase makes me cringe a little bit sometimes, but in this case, if we could show them other ways of children learning, I think that would have a much bigger impact. But also we have the same teacher who says, well, parents want these letter of the week worksheets or crafts. If that parent came and said, I want you to put Tabasco sauce on their mouth when they bite, we would
Exactly.
be like, oh, no, we can't do that. Heaven forbid. So
Yeah.
I think that sometimes teachers rely on that when really it's the teacher who wants to still hang on to it.
Absolutely, Heather. Kathy was talking, we were talking to a group of parents once, and, Kathy pointed out, because the parents were really mad that the program was going in the direction of play. And Kathy just said, you need to learn to trust your teachers here. I trust you if you work at Target to check me out correctly and to do inventory and, do your job. And if you're a lawyer, I trust you to go and litigate for me. You need to trust your teachers. And, it was powerful what she said to the parents at that training.
I'm glad you said powerful, because I was really mad. I was so angry at them because they were mistreating the teachers that we love, and respect. So anyway, that was not my finest moment, but
we tend to tell our teachers too, did the parents know how many trainings you go to? Let them know what the training was, give them some information on it. And even if they don't read it, at least they know that you're educated and you're taking all these trainings and you're getting parents have no clue how many, professional development trainings, so many.
How would they?
Right. So we're always like, send it home in a newsletter. I did a training this week on this, or I got my CDA, or I did this, or I did that. I just took my first college course, whatever it is. And then let them know what you learned from that, training or course, because I think that it builds some sort of a respect there, I guess, because I think parents still do believe, oh, they're just a babysitter kind of thing. And, parents are paying a lot of money, talk about receipts, and they want something in return.
Right,
so
right.
It's tough.
I think if we look at family engagement, back to letter of the week, if you will, if the teacher has the time and the ability, or the program director or owner, to say, this is why we don't do letter of the week, or this is what we do instead that is building your child's literacy skills and alphabet knowledge. And, when you read those fairy tales and you bring the Mother Goose board book in, to send something home or to put it in the app or the communication device that says, we worked on this today and this is why it's important, and we're building those skills. And it's not a joke, but every time a child is using Play-Doh, that's a pre-writing skill.
Yes. Climbing up the slide is a pre-writing skill.
Hello. We've been talking a lot about big body play. And if you don't have your core developed, you can't have your fingers ready to go yet. It's just physically, they're unable to do that. But it's just, for kids, letter of the week is kind of outdated as a practice. And I think if we let families know, this really is an outdated practice, and we're cutting edge here. And, we believe in the best research available, and this is what it tells us. We can make a huge difference. The problem is program people and teachers are cooked. Everybody's exhausted, between COVID and the turnover in our field in general. It's like one extra thing to do, and kind of sticking with the old way or the way we've always done things is a little bit easier sometimes. So we get that.
When I taught my emerging literacy class last semester, I had so much, it was a new assignment that I tried, and I had so much fun with it. But every class, we would talk about a different element of emerging literacy, not reading instruction, but emerging literacy from birth to 5. We would talk about a different aspect. And their assignment every week was, imagine a parent has asked you, what do you do to teach them to read, or what do you, and then based on today's discussion, write your answer. And then the final assignment was to put all that together into like a flyer for families that answered the question, how do you get them ready? And it was so much fun. And I think it was really a different way of engaging the students, who a lot of them come and are already working in programs that are maybe doing letter of the week or zoophonics or, whatever it might be. And I can't wait to do it again. There's nothing out that other than I liked it. that's the only thing I'm contributing.
That is a meaningful assignment, because that's a missing link. I think if educators felt empowered and had the words and the ability to say, we do finger painting instead of a penguin because blah, 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 blah. And then parents are going to say, wow, I didn't know that, because family members have other jobs, unless you're an early educator, you don't know what the early education system is like. So that's exactly what they need. We see it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Even on the CDA parent questionnaire, when I sit down with my students who are going through the process, so many parents will check off a 1 or a 2 for the sentence that says, the assessment piece that says, teaches my child pre-reading and pre-writing skills. And they'll give them a 1 or a 2 there. And I say to them, well, do you do that? And they'll say, oh yeah, every day. And I say, right, but the parents don't know that. So how are you moving forward going to let the parents understand that you're doing pre-reading and pre-writing? Because they obviously don't understand that yet. And they'll say, oh, okay, I get it. Yep. And so it's part of that process of them understanding the importance of letting the parents know. Yeah.
So if we want to think about what teachers and families can do to help support alphabet knowledge.
Thank you. Yes.
Language and literacy skills, right? Here's your segue, Heather, right?
Yep.
But well, we could get off on tangents for, we'll see, we'll be here all weekend with you. But, having a writing center, showing lots of writing examples. We already talked about names, and I think letter rocks are awesome. I always have them in my office where I'll have an uppercase A on one side and a lowercase a on the other side of the rock, just rocks I find at the beach with a Sharpie or a paint pen, and they disappear because every child who comes to visit me takes their name. It's always their name that they take. So I have a lot of vowels and, common letters in there that I have to reprint. But, things like that, and reading, and, writing things down with children, doing charts, doing graphs. And I worry about reading at home, just because, again, I'm old. My dad read the newspaper every night. And I remember kind of climbing under the newspaper and saying, do you read every one of those letters? And that's a lot of words to read. But I remember just looking at the headlines with him, we had magazines in our house. We had books in our house. Nowadays, everybody's reading is on their phone or their tablet. And that's another whole discussion. But I worry about that. Do kids see enough writing and reading? Do people write a grocery list anymore? Do people write things down at home or even have paper and pens available? And that's, I think we're in a different era, and alphabet knowledge and understanding and, phonological awareness and phonemic awareness are probably going to take longer than perhaps they did years and years ago. So I don't know what you think, LeeAnn, but that's what I think.
Kathy, excellent. Well said.
Sing, read, write, sing silly songs, things that run, all those kinds of things that teachers do every day. The actual letter that you cut out and have the kids glue the pom-poms on the P, you don't have to do those things. And don't. The other thing we should probably
don't.
I know. The alphabet freezes that we buy for our classrooms, where they have the upper and the lowercase letter kind of right next to each other, strung across usually the ceiling. Maybe rethink that. And maybe the whole class can work on some meaningful letters, or maybe they make letters with sticks out on the playground, or, they're writing letters in the sand or with chalk and things like that, because those alphabet freezes are confusing for little kids. They don't understand that the uppercase and the lowercase are two distinct letters. They think they connect together, if you think about the pre-operational thinker and young children. So I think sometimes teachers are set up to think this is what I need in my classroom and this is what I need to do. And we need to give them the power to say, you can do things differently.
Right. Yeah. And so much of what we put on the walls in the name of alphabet learning or literacy, whatever you want to call it, just contributes to the visual clutter that we now have research that says that's really interferes more for children than it helps.
Absolutely. We talk about that all the time. And I won't say the store, but I always say it looks like this store threw up in this classroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So if someone is listening and has been doing letter of the week and wants to sort of move away from it, what are some baby step recommendations? We've talked about a few things that are like concrete steps they could take, but how would you advise someone who said, okay, I want to do it, but how do I do it? Or what do I do first?
Yeah, I think there's a book out, No More Teaching Letter a Week, and it's just a very thin book. And I think it's a great first step to just take a look
Yeah,
at it?
the authors of that book are, well, he's since passed away, the late Bill Teal, Teale, and Rebecca McKay, MCKAY. And we buy that book for programs sometimes and send it to them. It's a quick read. There's a lot of research, and then there's some practical steps in the book itself. So go ahead, LeeAnn. I'm sorry I butted in on you.
No, that's great. I think that book is great only because it's a quick read. It's easy, and there's not a lot in there for someone to have to absorb. And then I think just recognizing that, children learn letters just by being around them. So the print-rich environment, talking about, the words, having a poem maybe on a chart paper and reading it across, and, the rhyming of words, the syllables, maybe you do something like, Heather, you talk about this, and maybe there's a new word, dinosaur, and you kind of clap it out for the syllables. So they start to understand how words have syllables. Right. But I think just being a print-rich environment is really important. Children's names and recognizing them are important, and read it. Like Kathy said earlier, read. I think that's so important. To build so many skills.
Yeah. And I would say, don't pull your remaining letters down off the wall. If you're in the midst of letter of the week, this is April, so you're probably closing in on finishing up, but don't miss the X, Y, and Z. If this is something you've done, don't pull them down just because we said, it's outdated and not really effective. Think about it. Think about it for next year. Think about it in different ways, and ask the kids about it. Sometimes you'll say, oh, tell me what you learned about that letter. And they just don't have a clue about it. Right. So you can tell it's not as meaningful as it might be. Yeah. And then, things you're already doing, hiding letters out in the sandbox outside and letting the kids find them with a paintbrush, putting them in your water table, having letter games for them to play while they're waiting for their turn in the bathroom, or, talking to them and saying, just like LeeAnn said about the name cards, HO is for Hope and HE is for Heather. All of those conversations are really important. And then I would just say, let kids scribble, let them doodle, let them use, I read someplace that there are like 40 distinct shapes that are in the alphabet to write the English alphabet. And that's a lot for kids to be able to do. So, be mindful about that they're just not ready yet. And they will be ready for kindergarten. If they're socially, emotionally, and aware, and they have self-help skills, they will be ready for kindergarten, and letter knowledge will come very quickly when the time is right.
So much of it comes organically. It just comes naturally. And Heather, I'm going to tell you a secret about Kathy.
Kathy,
God. Kathy did not. Yeah, isn't this awesome? Kathy did not go to preschool.
I did not.
And she did not go to kindergarten.
And I did not.
She does know her letters. And
wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. Yeah. There you go.
Exhibit
and I
A.
read pretty well, and my handwriting's not bad. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, and so my son taught himself to read without me even knowing it, and could read before kindergarten. Like I was just laying in bed reading one night, and he looked over my shoulder and started to point out some words to me. And then my youngest, it was the end of first grade, and they were really convinced they'd never learned to read, and so they had similar experiences at home, and a print-rich environment home, and we were readers and all that stuff. But for the two of them, it really had such an individual variation that it was important. So I'll just, I guess, wind down with a story. We used to play a word search game in the preschool, and I would usually, it was tight, like we'd read the same story every morning, and then we'd have a few words that we wanted to highlight through the week, So I don't remember what the book was, but the word we were highlighting was stuck, and we would hide letters written on index cards around the room. And then the word itself was in index cards already on it. So it was like a find and match kind of a game.
Love it.
And nobody could find the T. So it just said suck. Right above.
I bet they knew it and they remembered it too, right?
Yes.
That's awesome.
That's perfect. I love it.
Very exciting. When you hook an emotion to the learning, it's so much deeper.
it's
You're
joyful.
absolutely right. And you know what? All of those kids will remember suck and stuck because of that experience. So that's great. It
Yeah.
had meaning.
Oh my goodness.
I
That's
love it.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, this was so great and fun. Thank you
Super
both for
fun,
being
Kelly.
on. Look forward to talking to you again in a few weeks, I think is when we're going to do another one.
That would be great.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for listening. Hope you'll come back again next week for another episode, and we'll see you then.